Prior to 1996, booking air travel involved going through a travel agent or calling up the airline and waiting to reach a travel agent on the telephone. Both methods were time-consuming and provided the consumer with limited information on routes, schedules, and prices. During 1996, two online air travel reservation systems became available to the public. American Airlines introduced Travelocity, and just a few months later, Microsoft released Expedia. If you were a traveling adult during that time, you suddenly had remarkable access to your air travel options. As a consequence, a process began that displaced 40,000 travel agents from their traditional relationship between the consumers and the airlines. Travel agencies eventually lost their commissions for air travel bookings. This outcome used to be called the creative destruction side of capitalism. Today, we call this being on the wrong side of a digital transformation. But this digital transformation did not stop with online travel. Over the past 25 years, virtually every sector has undergone some level of digital transformation. Even the simple doorbell has gone through a digital transformation. My name is Jim Connor. Welcome to Game Changers Silicon Valley. My guest for this conversation is Terry Jones. Terry was the thought leader and chief disruptor behind the creation of Travelocity and became the first CEO. Travelocity was the first online reservation system for the general public, and it began a wave of innovation that swept the entire airline industry. Terry's work today is as an agent of change, speaking and consulting about how companies can develop new innovations from within their ranks. Let's join that conversation where Terry responds to a question about how does a company start to build a consensus for internal innovation.
You know, I do a lot of speaking to companies and consulting about that, and it's got to start at the top. It really is about the leader deciding that they're going to change the culture. And they have to accept failure. That's sort of the number one thing. 70% of startups fail. So you have to say, you know, this is John's project. It was great. This is Bob's project. The project failed. We're giving Bob another chance. You have to kill projects, not people. You know, at Intuit, they say we allow failure and harvest learning. There are other people who have the big failure award. They understand that, you know, if you're doing research and you're going out to try something, it's the idea that failed. And that takes a big cultural shift. And, you know, I've seen it in corporations who can't do that. And I've seen other ones who can, who say, look, we're trying stuff all the time. It doesn't always work. You know, look at the Fire phone from Amazon. That ended up with other technologies leading to Alexa. So failure doesn't always close the door. My son did a startup with four guys. He's worked at EA and Sony and now works in Microsoft in gaming, but he did a game startup. The company didn't make it. They only sold a couple $100,000. But when he went for his interviews, they said, you shipped a game with four people? That's amazing. So they didn't define it as a failure.
What are the conditions you find when you go to help as perhaps a consultant or a speaker at a company? Do you tell them, look, you guys aren't ready for it? Or do you say, these are the 5 things you have to do? Or how does that take place?
Yeah, it's really about senior management wanting to change, wanting innovation. So it has to come from the top down. The ideas come from the bottom up many times, the best ones. But the culture change has to come from the top down. And as we discussed a little bit in the last segment, it's about willingness to fail, accepting that some of these new ideas will fail and killing projects, not people. You have to put the right team in place, obviously, people who want change. And there are a lot of people in corporations who don't. They don't belong on an innovation team. You have to fund it appropriately and realize you're going to lose some money in bringing these things out. And sometimes they take a long time to come to fruition. So generally, I'm talking to CEOs and senior managers and trying to convince them that there really is a burning platform out there. The world really is changing, and they have to change with it. Once you get that culture change, then you'll find the ideas are there. You know, I think it was General Dynamics who spent a bunch of money getting one of these online idea programs going. And over half the good ideas came from their own staff. They just weren't listening before. They didn't have a way to listen to those ideas. So you have to circulate ideas widely, get them around the naysayers, and then build a culture in which an idea and an experiment can exist and even fail.
You know, I spent some time in the corporate world in the past, and there was a suggestion box, okay? And
Yeah.
people were encouraged to put their suggestions into the suggestion box, and they were going to be taken up by management and considered. I never heard one suggestion get visibility. Is that just a failed?
We had
Go ahead.
We had a program at American Airlines. I think it came out of GE initially, where we really worked on those kind of ideas. But it changed a little bit. Every new idea had to be approved by one person in the department where it was submitted and two managers from other departments. So, for example, we had a guy in the maintenance department who invented that little walk the plank thing that you see today that attaches a jet bridge to a regional jet, so you don't have to walk on the tarmac. That was rejected in the maintenance department. When this new program came along, it was accepted because marketing said, wow, people will like regional jets. And the finance guy said, yeah, they're cheaper to fly. Get this thing built. So sometimes it's about the ideas there. It's just not circulated widely enough that the head of the department, can't squash it. So you want to circulate those ideas widely.
I take it you deal with the CEO of these corporations when you're having these conversations. Is that correct?
Many times.
Do they express, hey, I've got a wall of resistance here. I want to do something, but I can't totally alienate my team. What do you suggest to them?
Well, sometimes that does happen. There's a great story from Netflix where eventually Reed Hastings had to separate the DVD people from the online people. And he just kind of put the DVD people over in the corner because they were the past, because they kept saying no. And that's kind of what happened with Travelocity. We were in a separate building with a separate team and a separate culture and a separate budget. And that allowed us to flourish without ever, being around all the naysayers all the time. So it is difficult to do that. And, you've got to run the marathon and the sprint. The marathon is making the quarterly earnings, right? And the sprint is all these little new things you're trying and these seeds you're planting to see if they grow. And then, then you can decide. It's like a greenhouse. You have to protect that idea in the spring. And then if it grows up, you can spin it out as they did with Travelocity. You can create a new department, or you can just say, hey, this is now part of our business. As happened with e-commerce and the internet in many companies. They started out with an e-commerce department, and now nobody really has that. It's just part of the business.
What's in your best, as a ballpark, what do you suggest as a starting point to the CEO says, look, I know I got to do something. I've got lots of resistance. I've got a few bright, innovative people here and there sprinkled out. I need to bring them together, give them some protection, give them a budget. Do you say, give them 6 months? Do you say, give them a year? Do you say, give me a business plan? 6
months or a year and give them some money.
Some money.
Some companies now have internal Kickstarters. I think Shell has an internal Kickstarter. If your idea gets turned down, you can go to the Shell Kickstarter and get funded.
Really?
That's a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
Others say, okay, we'll hand out a certain amount of money. We know most of it will be lost, but we're looking for this kind of odds, and we're willing to gamble on those things. And you see the kind of changes that are happening today where companies are making such bold decisions. GM announces the end of the internal combustion engine. Shell announces peak oil and is installing electric car chargers. Drone delivery gets approved by the FAA. I mean, during COVID, there were some pretty dramatic changes made.
Yeah. Well, you take me right into the next topic, which is, has this innovation idea, this intrapreneurship concept, suffered under COVID, or is it done just fine?
No, well, if you think about the biggest part of that today is, of course, digital transformation. It's the buzzword. Now even CFOs, it's one of their number one priorities. And when CFOs get around to it, then it's a trend. We've seen digital transformation accelerate greatly during COVID. Obviously driven partly by work from home and, buy online, pick up at the curb. But many other changes had to be made overnight. And there was one major chain, a retail chain, who had an 18-month plan to do curbside delivery. When COVID came along, they did it in 3 days. The boss won't forget that, right? and it's partly his fault, but everybody has to realize that you can do things a whole lot faster. So decision-making has been pushed down. People are moving to digital much more quickly. I think a lot of innovation has happened during COVID.
Good, very good. This bodes well for the U.S. economy, U.S. corporate growth, and so on, jobs, stability, what have you. Do you see any particular challenges coming down the road here that might be disrail the economy? Or are we moving, aside from COVID's displacement of jobs and so on, and when I said it, moving to the home and what have you, do you see any other major challenges on the horizon?
Well, I think clearly, industry is dying for more people to work in digital. I was on the board of an educational company. We were training engineers in a 1-year online program, and it was post pay. So they didn't pay anything, but we took a percentage of their salary for the next 3 years if they earned over $60,000. We were placing 90% of them. Really? So I think educationally, we need to help people understand that you don't necessarily need a 4-year degree, and that it's not all happening in Silicon Valley. It's happening all over the country. And there are unbelievable jobs in data analytics and engineering. We need more engineers and data analysts, a lot of them. Mm-hmm. I think we're starved for them. Yeah,
there's I didn't touch on this, but a lot of companies have research budgets, but they just seem to be just based on pure research. Go invent something. The transition to get them into products is a whole nother scenario. I'm thinking out loud, this is what you're really evangelizing about. Take this research at the company, move it into a real product quickly.
Well, that's the definition of innovation. Creativity is thinking up new things. Innovation is doing them. It's putting that idea to work and getting revenue from it. And that's what's critical. Nothing wrong with pure research. I mean, unfortunately, we've lost many of those pure research labs, like Bell Labs and others. But it's putting it to work quickly. And what's amazing now, and this is what's so cool about startups today, is your IT is in the cloud. Your customers come from search. You can start the company on a credit card with a great idea and get funding and build it with very few people. And there's no reason that corporations can't use those same tools to create new products more quickly with less people for less money, using the tools that entrepreneurs use today, so they can move more quickly and the U.S. can stay in the lead of innovation.
That's great. I had this insight as you were talking, so I want to just bring it up. But you're doing a lot of work with the corporations, but you are also a startup investor, angel investor.
Yeah.
Do you advise the startups to stay away from what the corporates are doing?
Well, no, I think, look, it's fine to be aware of what corporations are doing, and usually they're trying to bring down Goliath anyway. Mm-hmm. So, I'm an advisor to many startups. I've served on all these startup boards. Being in a startup is very different than being in a big company. As we said, you don't have the assets, you don't have the supply chain, you don't have the brand, but you have a bunch of dedicated people and a great idea that can move forward quickly, and you can bring down giants. But sometimes, you can just find a seam in the marketplace or a small piece of the market. You don't have to change everything to do innovation. Travelocity was just do it yourself. Kayak was just comparison, right? Worth $1.8 billion. Apple didn't invent the cell phone or the MP3 player. They just made them a whole lot better. So you don't have to boil the ocean and change the world to have very successful disruption. You just have to have faith in what you're doing and, get some people to invest in you, hire a great team, and move forward. And we talked in our pre-call about, all the reasons startups fail, and there are a lot of them. Yeah. But, with the right team and the right funding, you can do well. I've done 5 startups. One failed. I'm happy. I'm very happy with that record.
Well, Terry, you've been delightful, insightful, and I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation with you. And I'd like to give you an opportunity to tell people in our audience how they can follow up with you if they'd like to for any reason whatsoever about entrepreneurship or innovation in general.
Great. Well, you can reach me at tbjones.com. I'm a public speaker. Virtually, I've got my own studio, and physically, I'm traveling around giving talks. And my books are on innovation and disruption off. They're very quick reads that hopefully can help you in your innovation journey, and they're available on Amazon.
Well, I want to wish you every success going forward. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Great to be with you.
Thanks for joining us in the show. I want to take a moment to welcome the influx of new subscribers from the Cincinnati, Ohio area, influenced by our good friend Tony Shipley. We appreciate your support of the show, and we look forward to your comments. You can register for announcements about new shows as well as view past shows at our website, gamechangers.tv. If you listen to podcasts, you can find us under the title Game Changers Silicon Valley. We look forward to your continued engagement and participation in upcoming shows.